Yesterday I was pretty surprised when I came home to find 2 letters under my door. One was considerably more expensive than the other, with even that weird red thing they used to seal letters in the past. The other was mostly just a folder, and was probably delivered manually by the one who sent it. I looked first into the cheap letter. It had a weird symbol of a circle with arrows or something, a message, and also what seemed like a contract. I'll transcribe it. Thank you for your help getting us the Inquisition document. As a retribution for all your trouble in achieving this task, we are giving you 5,500 bolivios and an invitation to join our organization as a C-class due to your experience with security. If you are interested, go to Santa Cruz La Vieja after your 10-day contract in the Samapata ruins is finished and go to the following address. Sorry, I won't put the address here for security reasons. Asked to talk to Professor Arnaldo Celeste. The expensive one had a symbol of an anthropomorphic head on its seal. I opened it. It was written and seemed like pen and smelly red ink. We can work together to bring her back. Meet me in the pit. Don't tell Hector or I'll come after you. Check your broken mailbox. Well, that letter was certainly scary, but I couldn't help myself. I opened my broken mailbox. In the middle of its dust lay a photo, and seemed to have been taken by Polaroid. It was the photo of an abandoned school bus on the side of the road. Even with me being tired as hell, I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't want to share very personal details before now, but now it's unavoidable. Whatever lives up in that mountain is now toying with me, using my past to torment me. In the year of, if I remember correctly, 2006, I moved from Paraguay to Bolivia with my wife. We had to leave Paraguay due to safety reasons. Her grandfather was a secret police officer and torturer from Straussen dictatorship in the 70s and 80s. When this was all revealed in 2004, all members of her family started being harassed by the press and later by the EPP, a socialist guerrilla from Paraguay. We married in 2003, so I started being harassed too. In early 2006, they shot her parents. Her mother suffered from stomach and lung perforations. If her stomach fluid didn't leak out of her body, she'd be dead. Her father wasn't as lucky. 3 bullets, 1 in the neck, shoulder, and 1 in the brain. He's still in the hospital. This was the reason we needed to flee Paraguay. We bought a small but comfortable house in the rural and also outside of the small city of Samipata. It was a city mainly dedicated to tourism and viniculture, with only about 4,800 inhabitants. I worked several different jobs: security guard, bus driver, car mechanic, construction worker. In Paraguay, my wife previously worked as a substitute teacher until she was fired when her grandpa's secrets were revealed. In Bolivia, she managed to get a job as a primary teacher. It was a good life. I really miss it. In July of 2012, she went to a 3-day excursion with her students and 2 other teachers to Cerro Potosi. They never made it there. The police searches lasted several weeks, and detectives kept coming into my house, asking questions until 2017, when the case was closed. Not a single body was found, but now I could know where she was. I entered my car and drove up the mountain immediately. It was 11 p.m., but I didn't care. I still didn't have a flashlight, so I brought a lighter with me. When I arrived at the ruins, they were just like last night, completely empty and dark. Except they weren't empty. At the entrance, 6 or 7 hooded figures with candles in their hands were looking at me. I ignored them, entered, and went straight to the pit. All along the way, there were more and more hooded figures, and the bell tower was also back, but by that point, I was beyond giving a damn. The pit had a red carpet, and I think there were at least 20 of those hooded candle people at its sides. They were all singing in a language I didn't understand. The pit was not in ruins anymore. Its ancient stairs were back, and there were torches in the walls. I walked down the stairs for what I think 5 to 10 minutes. The hooded people were coming behind me, still singing. There were at least 100 of them in total. At the end of the stairs, there was an underground cave, with rivers, waterfalls, golden Inca statues, and at the center of everything, a golden throne, with piles and more piles of skeletons and bodies by its side. Sitting on the throne was an old man, dressed with an Inca emperor's clothing, but instead of gold and silver, they were made completely of rotten flesh and skin. "Welcome, Javier." I saw his mouth opening, but his voice wasn't coming from everywhere. I looked back and saw that the hooded people were all kneeling behind me. It was a deep, weird, old man voice. What are you?" I asked, looking straight into his eyes. Well, where his eyes were supposed to be. They were just 2 black holes with a weird black liquid dropping from them, like he was crying. "I am forgotten now, but if you had come 400 or so years earlier, everyone would know who I am. But now I am forgotten. Not only forgotten, but someone is covering me up. This annoys me. You see, in the good old days, the Inca feared me so much they would appease me. They would bring sacrifices to me. I had 1 soul per week, and now I'm lucky if I can bring a person per lunar period. I had a good life. I missed that time." "But do you feed on their souls?" "No, I'm immortal." "Then why are you doing all this? You've killed thousands of people." "Why do you need your wife and son? You've been living fine without her for 7 years. You're still able to eat, sleep, or breathe without her. Why aren't you happy like you were when you came to my city?" "Because she made me happy." "That's why I need those sacrifices, son. We're not so different. We just require different forms of happiness. Living forever is pretty boring if you don't find a hobby." "But why did you call me out here? You want me to bring people for you to kill?" "No, I want to tell you where your wife is." "She's alive?" "She's alive," I asked, almost shouting. "If you call that living. At the Quadria, you'll find a paper with the address." Thank you so much. I don't even know your name." "Call me Supe, son. And one other thing. I might want something in return. Bring your wife here tomorrow night. I'll be waiting for you." I ran to the Quadria as fast as I could, without even looking back. I got the paper with the address, entered my car, and hit the road. The journey is a long one. It lasts 8 hours. I'm writing this at a gas station on the way, while I have lunch. I'll keep you updated. I arrived at the address, nervous as hell. I drank so much coffee I don't even remember half the way. I'm also pretty sure I got fined 2 or 3 times for exceeding the speed limit, and I may have run over a cyclist, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, I probably committed some crimes, but by that point, I didn't care. I just needed to see my wife. The place mentioned in the message was an arid and extremely isolated place, in a side road of a side road. Now, my car is not a 4x4, and I had a hard time driving there, but I did it. It was arid, but not a desert. It still had some trees. 200 or 300 meters into this forest, there was a seemingly abandoned barn. Oh, how the place was hot, almost 40 degrees Celsius. When I reached the barn, after 5 or 6 minutes of walking, I found its doors open. The place was dark, and the light buttons near the entrance didn't work, I used a cheap flashlight I bought along the way. There were dozens of cars abandoned in there, including a school bus. The school bus my wife was in when she disappeared. I entered it as fast as I could, but it was empty and full of bugs and dust. And that's when I heard it. Screaming. Kids screaming. I wish they were ghosts like previous times, but sadly they weren't. I followed the sound and found a stair leading to the underground. I'd usually try to spare you from the gruesome details, but this time I can't, so if you can't handle gory stuff, be careful with this chapter. There were at least 100 people down there. Most of them had their legs and arms cut. Some of them were clearly dead and decomposing, and some of them were alive but couldn't move. The absolute majority of these people had pieces of their skin missing, and some of them also had no eyes, ears, or noses. Some people were hanging from the ceiling. They had hooks on their shoulders, no eyes. Their mouths and ears were sewn shut. Their arms and legs were cut, no hair, and all of their genitalia were removed. The only thing showing me they were alive was their breathing. Purified, is that you? Will you kill me already? An eyeless kid with no legs or scalp asked me, crawling with their arms. I couldn't tell if they were male or female. What the fuck is happening here? I shouted. I couldn't hold myself anymore, and then I looked to the ceiling above me. There she was, my wife. Be careful! A man with no legs in the corner of the room shouted. I looked around and saw a man wearing a doctor's coat and a mask, made completely of skin, coming down the stairs, with a scalpel in his gloved hands. Well, I thought it was a mask. When he got closer, I saw his face. It was full of scars, and with several different skin tones. He wore no mask. Thought you could sneak into my office? He said, pointing his scalpel at me. At that moment, I was pretty sure I was going to die, so I had no option but to run away. He came after me, still holding that damn scalpel. I'll fix your skin too, he shouted. Well, usually the protagonist gets away in these situations, but I smoked for several years and was pretty tired after all of those days of no sleep. He perforated my back a couple times and kicked my leg, tumbling me to the ground. Why are you doing this? I asked, as he was getting ready to stab me one final time. Each mole, each wart, each birthmark is a mortal sin in our skins. I purify myself by getting them out of our skins, he said, pointing to the different skin tones and scars in his body. I'll save myself by getting all the pure skins and putting them in my own. That is the only way to get to heaven. Thank God I brought my lighter with me. When he got distracted talking about his delusions, I set his coat on fire and ran away. You idiot! You're ruining my perfect skin, he cried, as the fire spread throughout his body. I ran to my car, hearing his angry footsteps behind me. I dared to look back. A good portion of his body was on fire, but that wasn't stopping him. I had almost reached my car, but I started to fail. My lungs were aching, even with the adrenaline. I wish I never put a cigarette in my mouth. Gotcha! He screamed, as he tried to stab my chest. He stabbed me, but the scalpel got stuck in my chest. I used my basic brawling skills to punch his face and knock him down. I kicked his face 2 or 3 times just in case. He was knocked out. I'm not stupid. I didn't remove the scalpel. I didn't want to go through all that trouble just to bleed to death. So I carried on, even with the pain. It was difficult picking my wife up from the hook and putting her in my car, but I did it. I could see her accelerated breathing. She was terrified. Her eyes, tongue, eardrums, skin, and limbs were removed. She only knew someone was carrying her, and only wasn't crying out of fear because she didn't have her eyes anymore. I couldn't help myself. I walked to where the killer was lying, got his cell phone, called the cops, threw it away, then entered my car. I ran over his legs 3 times, just in case he woke up and tried to flee. Bit of poetic justice. And then I drove off toward the fortress. I reached the ruins at 23:45 of the same day. I went straight to the pit with my wife's body in my arms. She was so thin I could see her bones. I remember Supei's words from earlier. If you call that living. He was right. My wife was dead. This wasn't life. But if Supei is a god of death, maybe he could give her life too. I just had to hope he wouldn't lie to me, that he would bring her back. You did better than I expected, son, Supei said from his throne. There wasn't a chorus of hooded people this time, just me, my wife, and him, if we can call that him. I'm so tired. Please give her back to me, I said, sobbing. I was almost sleeping, feeling my eyes closing. But the will to save my wife was bigger. Remember our deal, Javier. We are not friends, just business partners. I need something from you, and if you give it to me, she'll be back to you, with all her rip parts intact. What do you need? I asked, feeling the tears going down my cheeks. I need you to kill Arnaldo Celeste. Excuse me? Arnaldo Celeste, the representative of the South American branch of the Foundation. The Foundation? Which one? You're not stupid, Javier. You know which one I'm talking about. Arnaldo sent you a letter 2 days ago. Don't you remember? Go to his office and kill him. He won't be prepared for that, and will succumb easily. Your wife will be back to you if you do that. And what if I don't? In this case, not only will I not give your wife back, I'll also put you in the same situation as her, living in eternal darkness, alone, scared, not feeling anything, and worst of all, alive. So, when you finish your 10 days, go there and kill him. And just in case you don't believe, I can bring your wife back. He moved his hand in a strange manner, and I felt a small pain on my chest and back. The scalpel had disappeared, and the stabbing injuries were healed. After that, I just went home. I didn't say anything. I was so tired, I couldn't. The radio was saying something about a serial killer being arrested in the countryside. I couldn't care less. I just needed to sleep. I'll update you after I finish sleeping.